Unlike its legacy counterpart, Modern Burn is a tier 1 deck. It is normally run as either 2 or 3 colours. It is a base of red and white, and then it sometimes splashes either green or black. Burn is sometimes jokingly referred to as a combo deck. Combine 7 low-cost burn spells that do 3 damage each to do 21 damage to your opponent and kill them. But don't be tricked into thinking that you're just going to be flinging lightning bolts at your opponent. Burn is a deck that requires a lot of thought. You need to be very careful about the sequencing of your cards, lest you have in your hand an unplayable Skullcrack when your opponent casts their Siege Rhino because you chose to play Eidolon that turn. So let's start with the creatures that Mono Burn plays. First up is the ever-faithful Goblin Guide. It is a 2/2 for 1 that has haste. It has a downside of giving your opponent a land card, potentially if it's on top of the library, but it's well worth it for the amount of damage that you're going to get in. Next up is Monastery Swiftspear. She is run as a 4 in the deck. She costs 1, has 1/2, and has haste plus prowess, which means that she gets pumped by your burn spells. Next up is Eidolon the Great Revel. Now the thing about Modern is that most of the cards in Modern cost 3 or less, so when you play him he's usually going to be affecting almost all the cards that your opponent could be casting. Now you've probably noticed of course that most of the cards in Burn, in fact all of the cards in the Burn deck cost 3 or less, which means then that he's going to be hitting you as well. But hopefully when you cast your burn spells you're going to be doing 3 damage to your opponent but taking only 2 in return from Eidolon, so you will be winning the race. And plus he is also a body for the ground. And the final creature that is sometimes run in burn decks is Grim Lavamancer. Now the other creatures in the burn deck are all run as snap 4-ofs. Grim Lavamancer is the exception. This is because while it's an amazing card that allows you to get value from your burn spells, it is not good to draw in multiples. So normally this is run as either a 0 to 2 of in the deck. And those there are the creatures. Let's move on to the instants and sorceries in the burn deck. Now of course, Modern Burn runs 4 lightning bolts in the deck. It costs 1, it deals 3 damage to your opponent or a creature, and it's an instant. This is the top tier burn spell in your deck. Lava Spike is up next, and this is included as a snap 4-of. Rift Bolt is also usually included as a 4-of in the deck because it only costs 1 if you suspend it. This is often the first turn play that you will make while playing Burn. Now those there are the base instants and sorceries that you will find in all Modern Burn decks. The rest of the instants and sorceries that you include will be dependent upon your meta and personal decisions. Skullcrack is a very important card that is often included as either a 2 or 4-of in the deck. Now this is very important. If your opponent gains even just a small amount of life, it can often make the game unwinnable for you. Not only does Skullcrack stop your opponent from gaining that important amount of life, it also deals 3 damage to them. Searing Blaze is often included as a 2 to 4-of in the deck. Now this is an amazing card. Not only does it deal 3 damage to your opponent, but it also deals 3 damage to a creature. This lets you get a total of 6 damage in for just 2 mana. Now the downside though to Searing Blaze is it requires a creature to target, and it also requires landfall to be able to deal 3 damage instead of 1. This is why it isn't necessarily included as a 4-of in all decks. Boros Charm is usually included as either a 2 to 4-of in the deck. It deals 4 damage, which is a lot of damage straight to the face for just 2 mana. Shard Volley is usually included as either a 1 to 3-of in decks that choose to run it. Now Shard Volley is an amazing card, but it requires you to sack a land, so be sure to sequence your plays very carefully while playing this card. Atarka's Command is usually included as a 2 to 4-of in the decks that choose to run it. Now this is a fantastic card. Not only can it stop your opponent from gaining life, while also doing 3 damage in the face, but you can also choose to potentially put +1/+1 counters on your creatures to do a ton of damage. Now the one downside to this though, instead of Skullcrack, is you can't stop damage from being prevented. Lightning Helix is usually played as a 2 to 4-of in the decks that choose to run it. Now some people don't really like it very much and consider it the worst burn spell in the deck because gaining 3 life is often not very relevant. But when you're playing against an opponent's burn deck, that life swing is very important. And finally, some people choose to run Bump in the Night. Now don't be fooled into thinking that you're going to be able to use Bump in the Night's flashback cost to get value. Burn decks normally run a maximum of 20 lands, so you're never going to be able to have 6 mana to use its flashback cost, and it also requires you to splash black. And decks that choose to run Bump in the Night, it is normally included as a 4 of. Now those are the main board instants and sorceries. Let's move on to the lands. Burn normally runs between 17 lands on the low end and 20 lands on the high end, with some people being very keen and trying to run 16 lands. Burn will normally run anywhere between 10 to 13 red fetch lands, depending on the number of Grim Lavamancers and Searing Blazes in the deck. You can run any type of red fetch land like Bloodstained Mire or Wooded Foothills. Next it runs 4 Sacred Foundry. Your base colours are red and white, so this is a very important shock land. If you're splashing green, you'll normally be running between 1 to 2 copies of Stomping Grounds. And if you're playing black, you'll be splashing 1 to 2 copies of Blood Crypt. And of course, the rest of the slots are filled with basic mountains. So those are the cards that commonly see play in the main board. Let's move on to the cards that commonly see play in the sideboard. First up is the ever important Kor Firewalker. You bring this in against opposing burn decks. Now, not only then does this make your opponent's burn spells so much worse, you can use Kor Firewalker to profitably block your opponent's red creatures all day, every day. The only way for your opponents to get rid of Kor Firewalker using red spells is to use a Skullcrack so that the damage can't be prevented. Cards like Kor Firewalker are why Burn normally plays Path to Exile in the sideboard as well. It lets you deal with your opponent's problematic creatures, especially when they have protection from red. However, this will give your opponent an extra land, which is very relevant, so use this card wisely. Rending Volley is usually included in the sideboard to deal with the Splinter Twin combo. It will kill a Deceiver Exarch when your opponent goes to put a Splinter Twin on it, fizzling their combo. Molten Rain comes in against 3 to 4 colour decks. Now these decks are normally extremely greedy with their land already, and when they're playing against you, they're going to be very careful with the shock clans that they choose to play, meaning they'll often play basic lands. You can use Rending Volley to disrupt their land base and take them off certain colours and punish them even more for being aggressive and greedy with their mana base. Deflecting Palm is an amazing sideboard card to bring in against decks that often have a single big threat. A great example of this is Affinity, when they suit up a creature with cranial plating and attack for massive amounts of damage. You can also use this to stop lifelink damage hitting you and then to redirect it back to your opponent. Just remember, you won't be gaining life when you do this. Smash the Smithereens is like Searing Blaze but targets any artifact. This is fantastic anti-affinity hate. And of course there is Destructive Revelry. Now this is not only a great anti-affinity card, but it also hits enchantments as well. This lets you deal with problematic enchantments like Leyline of Sanctity while doing damage straight to the face. This is another fantastic reason to splash green. Now there are lots of other cards that you can play in your modern burn deck. Those are just the ones that are commonly seeing play right now. Try them out for yourself and see what you like in your local meta. So that's it. If you liked this video, I'd appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up and if you subscribe to Magic the Gathering Kiwi by clicking on the subscribe button below this video. And keep watching because I'm going to be posting other great Magic the Gathering videos.